In Unit 5, we're going to discuss communicable diseases. And we're going to start by using a lesson from Chapter 23, just the first one, on understanding communicable diseases. We're going to talk about some of the different germs or pathogens that are out there, how our bodies get these illnesses, what happens when our bodies do get sick, and certainly we're going to talk about preventing the illnesses. We'll then move on to making good choices, including abstinence, staying away from sexual activity, which can lead to STDs, or sexually transmitted diseases or infections, which will lead into our discussion on HIV and AIDS. So let's define what we're talking about here. Communicable diseases are a disease that is spread from one living organism to another or through the environment. We all get sick. The easiest examples are the cold and getting the flu, things that many of you probably either currently have or have had in the very recent future, or excuse me, recent past. We're talking about illnesses that are contagious and infectious. Many of which you've had or have heard of, and they come from pathogens. We're talking about microorganisms that cause disease, and examples are viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoan, or rickettsias. So how do we get these things? Communicable diseases occur when pathogens enter the body. Simply put, we come in contact with the germ. Not only do we come in contact with it, but it gets into our body. Our skin does a really good job of protecting ourselves, and even the fluids in our eyes, nose, and ears does a pretty good job of killing and getting rid of these things. But when it does get in, if the body fights the invaders, we can develop. If the body doesn't fight the invaders, we can develop an infection. We get sick. If we're talking about an infection of the respiratory system, like the nasal passages and the bronchial tubes, you're going to cough, and your nose is going to run, and those type of things. An infection is a condition that occurs when pathogens in the body multiply and damage cells. All these different pathogens, especially viruses and bacteria, are going to target specific cells in your body and break them down. Again, typically we're talking about respiratory infections when we're talking about the cold and the flu. So let's talk about viruses. The two most common communicable diseases are the cold and the flu, caused by viruses. So I would be shocked if each and every one of you haven't had both of these, but for certain the flu, there's very many strains of both of them, so it's hard for our bodies to build up any immunity to something that changes and evolves, and there's something new every year. A virus is a piece of genetic material surrounded by a protein coat. They look like the one in the picture here, and you'll see some in other pictures and graphics, and each one has a unique kind of design, so to speak. Once a virus penetrates its cell, it begins to multiply. It makes more of itself inside that cell. New viruses then burst out of that cell and take over other cells, and they spread and spread and spread. Immune system kicks in and usually kills the virus, but sometimes they fall behind, and that's when the infection happens, and we're sick for a few hours, a few days, weeks, whatever it might be, depending on the illness. Antibiotics do not work against viruses but sometimes they can treat the symptoms of the virus, make you feel better. But antibiotics are typically used to destroy bacteria cells. This short little video clip is going to show you how viruses work. It's a cartoon. It's kind of cute and funny, but at the same time, it does a really good job of simply illustrating how a virus comes in and attacks the body, and how the immune system, the white blood cells and such, can often miss and allow that infection to grow. And the same thing is repeated over and over and over again until we get sick. Eventually, our body's immune system and white blood cells will be able to overtake that, but that would be for a simple virus like the cold or the flu. The other most common types of communicable diseases typically come from bacteria. Bacteria is a single-celled microorganism that lives almost anywhere on Earth. Guarantee you, on your desk, on your pencil, behind your ears, on your fingers, on your fingernails, there are all sorts of bacteria. To some people, that would really freak them out and scare them, but at the same time, our body does do a very good job of keeping them out. Many of them are harmless. Some are actually helpful, like there's some helpful bacteria in yogurt and some enzymes, things like that, that make it become what it is. But they do produce, many of these produce toxins, and that's what we actually can get sick from. It's the substances that kill cells or interfere with their functions. So we get, sick from bad food that has bacteria in it that it shouldn't, and we get food poisoning because a lot of the toxins that are released by these bacteria. They can be treated with antibiotics. So if you've ever had strep throat, you may have been given penicillin, amoxicillin, some sort of antibiotic. And there is a concern because of overuse of these drugs, these antibiotics, that some bacteria have become resistant and your body no longer is able to fend them off with that simple antibiotic. This will be a really short video on the growth of bacteria over a relatively short period of time. And I believe this is like kind of a time-lapse video, but it's going to look quick. I'm just going to show you how quickly bacteria can multiply and infect the body.
Bacteria reproduce very simply and rapidly by doubling their contents and splitting in two. Just one bacterium, dividing every 20 minutes, could produce nearly 5,000 billion bacteria in one day.
So that's a lot, and obviously you can understand how someone would get sick, and that would put your immune system at a, really tax your immune system in order to try and defend it and destroy all those bacteria. Other pathogens that are out there, we have fungi, protozoans, and rickettsia. Fungi are plant-like organisms that can cause disease of the skin, mucous membranes, and skin. Examples: athlete's foot. A lot of athletes will get that. Protozoan, single-celled microorganisms, can be larger and more complex than bacteria, such as malaria, that can be transmitted through mosquito bites. Not so much in this country, but certainly in third world countries you see more of a concern of that, where malaria is bigger. And rickettsia resemble bacteria not often into the body through insect bites such as typhus. But again, something we don't see a ton of in this country just due to our modern medicine, our hygiene, and just our ability to kind of keep ourselves clean. These are just a look at some of the most common causes of communicable diseases and a list that is under each of the 5 different categories. Really the 2 biggest ones obviously being viruses and bacteria. Some people are going to have ones on this side of the chart, but we're really looking at ones on this side that we're either immunized for, have vaccines for, or that people do come in contact with occasionally. So take a look at the list. It's not anything that you necessarily have to memorize, but it's a good reference point to see what is out there and how they're classified. I think the biggest concern when we're talking about communicable diseases is how these things spread. We certainly know there's direct contact. If you come in contact with someone who's sick and you touch them, bite them, kiss them, you have sexual intercourse or some sort of contact with them, we know that those things and those germs, aka the pathogens, are going to be transmitted. Other methods of transmission include a puncture wound where somebody can get tetanus from a rusty nail, childbirth. A pregnant woman can transmit an infection to her unborn child through the placenta. And that's when we're concerned definitely about STDs and STIs, HIV and AIDS, or contact with infected animal bites and scratches can sometimes cause transmit disease. Rabies being a big one from a rabid animal. Not that it's a big concern, but animals do spread some of these things. It's not like it's going to be a cold and the flu, but who's to say that your dog isn't rolling around in some laundry or somewhere in the bathroom where they come in contact with a germ and then you touch them a few minutes later and get the cold that brother or sister or somebody had. So those 2 things can be spread through household animals. And of course we have indirect contact. In a way that's what the animal was doing I mentioned a second ago, but it can be just as dangerous. We have contaminated objects. If we touch a contaminated object, such as a doorknob, we can pick up pathogens. Pathogens can enter your body if you rub your eyes. So it's really important that we wash our hands. If I sneeze and go touch a doorknob, everyone who's going through that door is subject to come in contact with it. It's not hard to understand that, but that's why it's more important that we really keep our hands clean especially at a school where dozens, if not hundreds, of kids could be touching the same uh, things in a school, and really spreading germs that way. It seems like such a common sense thing to make sure that we're washing our hands and cleaning up after ourselves, but I can guarantee you, myself, and most people that we're around simply just do not do a good enough job with it. So here's a little video on washing your hands and really the importance of it, and knowing that, hey, if we can take a few extra minutes out of our day to keep clean, that might prevent you from getting sick for a few days that, a lot of times is uncomfortable, unpleasant, and just overall pretty icky.
CDC TV presents Health Matters.
At the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, we are very interested in preventing transmission of disease in our community.
People aren't washing their hands as often as they say they are or as often as they should. Some scientists estimate that up to 80% of all infections are transmitted by hands.
And the germs can live on our hands for quite some time unless we clean them. If we don't clean them and we go and touch something in the meantime, we can spread those germs to other places or other people. And disease can be spread this way.
Animals can carry germs that can make people sick, and these germs can be not only on the animal, but can be in areas where the animals live as well.
When people do regular hand washing, especially with children, that you supervise that hand washing, so you make sure the children are doing it properly and for the length of time that's necessary.
They're coughing and sneezing onto their hands and touching doorknobs. They're using shared objects like pencils or toys. And disease is passed easily from one child to the next.
Try and avoid sneezing into your hand because you just contaminate them and then spread those germs everywhere. Focus on sneezing into your elbow, like this, and then you don't contaminate your hands. Turn on the water, wet your hands, apply a good amount of soap and lather up, and then focus on washing your hands for about 20 seconds, about the time it takes to sing Happy Birthday twice. Focus on washing the front of your hands, the back, in between the fingers, around the nails, and so on. And then rinse everything off. Use something to wipe your hands after that, preferably something disposable like a paper towel, and then use that to turn off the tap as well. If you get a chance, use that to also open the door to the bathroom as you're leaving. The best way to wash your hands is using running water and soap, but sometimes we don't have that available. So think about carrying with you a hand sanitizer. That should have at least 60% alcohol content.
It's important to realize that those agents don't remove soil and other material that might be on your hands. And in that case, you really need to use soap and water.
If you've been touching objects all around you all day long, just assume that your hands are contaminated and make sure before you prepare food, you wash your hands. Before you eat, that you wash your hands.
You can't emphasize hand hygiene enough. Clean hands save lives.
Keeping your hands clean is a very important activity, both at home, at school, at work, and in the healthcare setting.
Hand hygiene or hand washing is the single most important thing that you can do to help prevent the spread of infection and to stay healthy and well.
Pretty simple. Keep your hands clean. Less likelihood that you're going to get sick. Just some other ways people get sick. Vectors are out there, something that you certainly have been exposed to. An organism that carries and transmits pathogens to humans or other animals. Common ones include flies, mosquitoes, ticks, things that are out here in Minnesota. Things that can be transmitted would be West Nile virus, malaria, Lyme disease. We call these vector-borne diseases. Not something you hear a ton about, but we certainly have heard of Lyme disease and malaria and things like that. Contaminated food and water. When food is improperly handled or stored, bacteria can develop. It's true for meat, fish, fruits, vegetables, water supplies. Hepatitis A is certainly something that would be a concern. So we got to make sure we take precautions. We just watched the video on washing hands. Wash your hands before you eat, after you use the bathroom, after handling pets, before and after inserting contact lenses or applying makeup, anything around your face, nose, eyes, or mouth. After touching an object that's handled by an infected person. If you know somebody's got a cough or they're sneezing, just be aware that they probably have some pathogens that can easily be spread to you or me. Looking in the right-hand column here, I'm sure you all could come up with some ways to protect yourself against vectors or getting sick. And some things that are real popular or common out there are to protect yourself or to limit the time you spend outdoors at dawn and dusk when mosquitoes are the most active. We certainly live in a state where at certain times in the summer mosquitoes are really, really bad. And it's a possibility that they can transmit some of those things to us. Wear pants and long sleeve shirts to avoid insect bites, certainly wood and deer ticks. Use insect repellent and avoid contact with dead birds, things where we're going to see extra pathogens, bacteria, and things like that. Some other common prevention strategies. Number one, avoid sharing personal items such as eating utensils. Far too often people want to share their food, want to taste something, and it depends on how much you trust the person, but it doesn't have to be a life-threatening illness. It can just be the cold or the flu that you may not want from boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad, whoever. And make sure that we're handling food properly. Make sure you're cleaning up after yourself, you're cooking things all the way through just to avoid anything getting into your body that shouldn't be there. Eat well and exercise. Getting nutrients your body needs and staying fit will help you fight against infection. If your body's in tip-top shape, both inside and physically with your physical abilities, you're more likely to be able to fend off some of these things. Avoid tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs. Abstain from sexual contact, especially with multiple partners or people that you don't know their sexual history. Cover your mouth when you cough or sneeze, and wash your hands after using a tissue. Even when you do use a tissue, we know that germs can be on your hands. You certainly don't want to spread it to other people, even if you thought you were being sanitary.